Welcome to Smulcast, where we're helping you live a happier and fuller life. My name is Abby, I'm a registered dietitian, and today I'm joined by Mbali, who is also a registered dietitian, and we're going to be talking on the episode about unpacking all things protein, so figuring out any and everything about protein, especially when it comes to plant-based diets. So Mbali, I obviously have the privilege of knowing you personally.
Yes.
For those who do not have that privilege, please could you tell us a little bit more about yourself, so what you do in your day-to-day life when it comes to your work, and also what drew you to dietetics and nutrition in general.
Okay, so yes, I'm a dietitian. I like to call myself I like to call myself a clinical and consultant dietitian. And many people know me as urban dietitian. That's just what I
plug it in there.
You have to give yourself a name or something. But a clinical part is that I help individuals reach their health goals through nutrition. I have a special interest in gastrointestinal health, and the consultant part, I work with brands, I work with media as a contributor. I've been in the game for a long time.
You've been in the game, yeah. We're very lucky to have you here tonight because of
it. But so that's what I do on a day-to-day. It's just my day differs. Some days I'm more focused on the clinical work that I do in the hospital. Some days it's more fun and glamorous stuff. I get to put on makeup and look
cute.
Come
to a podcast.
Yes, and come to yes. And thank you for having me, by the way. So that's what I do. But what drew me to dietetics, I think for me, coming from where I come from in a more like a disadvantaged background. But of course, at the time, I didn't know that. I didn't know what I know now. But it just pushed me into looking into what people were eating and my family as well, and struggles I had with my dad. And I just started learning, and I'm like, okay. Obviously, I fought a lot with my mom because I was wasting a lot of food. I didn't understand. I wanted them to try a lot of different things.
Right.
But I think over time, I started just understanding I was more into helping people heal and educating people, and dietetics just fit the bill quite nicely. And I'm a foodie, a big foodie. I love food. And so there was that. And the fact that with dietetics, we're still able to work in hospital, do therapeutic nutrition, that was a plus for me. So that's what drew me to dietetics.
Yeah, I'm really excited to chat to you today. We're going to be talking a lot about protein. So I think before we dive into the episode and get our hands dirty with all of these scientific terms and everything, can we just lay some groundwork and get some key definitions for terms that we're going to be throwing around tonight? So things like amino acids, maybe our different macronutrients like proteins, carbs, fats, maybe what a macronutrient even is.
Yeah. So when it comes to, I think the big term, the macronutrients, so we've got the big nutrients, those are carbohydrates, protein, and fat. And the word suggests macro means big. But then we've got micronutrients, which are normally vitamins and minerals, those that we need in smaller quantities. So when it comes to the macronutrients, there are three macronutrients. It's protein, carbohydrates, and fat. And I think that's where people get confused. There is protein as a macronutrient, and then there is protein-rich foods, which means those foods are high in protein. And when we speak about the macronutrients, we have to respect the nutrient itself, I guess, and say, okay, proteins, and then we're going to be speaking about amino acids. So when it comes to protein, the building blocks, what makes a protein be a protein, it's those little amino acids. They're not little in function, it's just they connect. We've got about 20 different amino acids.
And they make up the different proteins.
They make the protein, the different protein structures. But the protein itself is a macronutrient. It has many functions like satiety, hormone production, enzymes as well. It's involved in enzymes. It's even involved in things like transporting cholesterol. We need protein to do that. And all of those functions make then a nutrient. But usually, and I think that's where people maybe sometimes forget, is that a protein cannot do so, can only, need support. It needs support. It can only do so much on its own. And that's where we get more benefit if there's a combination with carbohydrates and fats, because those are micronutrients that support the protein function.
Absolutely.
But at the end of the day, all the three macronutrients, the protein, carbohydrates, and fats, they contribute directly to the total energy, which is, call it kilojoules, they call it calories, just like rands and dollars, we call it kilojoules in South Africa, and in other parts of the world, they call it calories, but that is what energy is, and protein, carbohydrates, and fat contribute to that.
Yeah, and I think it's amazing that you mentioned that there's only so much that protein can do, that has a certain list of functions.
Yeah.
but there's certain things that it cannot do,
On
no
its
matter
own.
how much
Yep.
protein you are taking in every single day. And I think that's what I'm so excited to talk
Yeah.
about today, because protein has been getting a lot of attention
Yeah.
recently. So it's really nice that you mentioned the fact that there are other macronutrients and other nutrients that we need to be including throughout the
Support, yeah.
day, because there's things that just cannot be done without those ones,
Yeah.
for example. The other term that I know that we're going to be chatting about a lot today is something that we just throw out and we say, okay, essential nutrients. So
Yeah.
when we say that, what can you just quickly explain what we mean by that?
Essential nutrients are the nutrients that our body cannot make. That means you have to get them from food sources, or in cases where you can't get from food sources, that's where supplementation comes in. But first priority is food first. So those nutrients we need for our day-to-day bodily functions, and our bodies cannot make them. So I think that's just
Yeah, plain as, they're essential. That's it.
That's it.
We need them, and we
and
can't
there's a
make
long
them.
list of essential nutrients that we
Nutrients,
cannot
yeah.
make. And there are certain vitamins and minerals that even if you want, you can cry tears, you will never make, you
Yep.
get from food sources. And I think that's where the beauty of nourishment and looking into nutrients, not just for means of, and I'm going to make an example of protein. People look at protein as means of, I'm going to get tough and
muscles.
fit.
That's all they think about. Yeah.
No, there's more to it. And I think that's why then we speak of essential. Even protein has some elements of being essential, because, you know, our bodies can make, but we need protein from food as well.
Exactly.
And that's where amino acids come in, because we cannot make.
For sure. Amazing. Yeah. Thank you so much for that. So I think we've got like a nice groundwork in terms of what we're going to be talking about today. And then I know you've already mentioned amino acids and proteins and the different kinds of proteins and everything. And what I think has been really nice recently, and what I've seen is the trend that's been popping up, is a lot of focus on plant-based diet, which I think is amazing. But I think there's been quite a lot of pressure on like exclusive plant-based diets. So now it's not even just plant-based anymore, in my opinion. It just becomes actually a whole different thing. It's just plants. It's not plant-based, it's plant, which is vegan or vegetarian, and just completely excluding all animal sources.
Yeah.
So what is your take on that first off?
Yeah. I think for me, it's the point you're making is very important. Plant-based is, as the name suggests, it's plant-based. It's not vegan. So yes, there is vegetarian, full-on vegetarian diets that is usually followed by vegans. That's fine. But people get put off by the term plant-based, as if somebody said, gun to the head, you never eat meat.
Don't go near that camembert cheese ever in your life again.
That's not what plant-based is.
Yeah.
Even if we see a product that is labeled plant-based, it doesn't mean that that product is saying, oh, now that you eat this, you're vegan.
Now you're not allowed to touch eggs again.
No, it just means in making that product, or in, okay, that's if they actually stick to the word plant-based, because also they prioritize plants.
For sure.
There is whole grains, there is, you know, so you have to still read the ingredients. But my take on plant-based is that we have to eat more plants for improving our health, whether it's gut health, it's heart health. And majority of the people, as is in clinical practice, do not eat enough vegetables. So when we start shifting and saying, instead of eating meat every day, where it's just, as I said, carbohydrates are important, but I mean, a mountain. It's just a mountain with meat.
Yeah.
That's not ideal. So we need more plants. But then we take it a step further and say, even in the other foods that we consume, how about then we prioritize foods that, you know, are more plant-based, and or even in our diet. So I think for me, it's just pushing us to say, I grew up in a community where we ate meat every single day, but obviously we were not rich, but we ate meat every single day. And you're like, how is this even possible?
And then I find it so funny, because as like South Africans, for example, if you go to like anyone and you're like, okay, why don't you just try 1 or 2 days a week of actually eating, you know, more plant-based, vegetarian, cut out meat products for 1 or 2 days of the week. They look at you like you've asked them to, I don't know what, but like they look at you like you're crazy. They think it's the most difficult thing for so many people.
It's because we think plant-based means it's vegan.
It's immediately, and it means that you can never touch meat again, or any animal
even
products.
With the days, Abby, it's sometimes you can eat meat every day, but still be plant-based, whereby your portions are prioritizing plants.
And you've got like plant-based proteins included into your meal as well. So you can still have your chicken in a stir fry, but add like some edamame beans or some chickpeas or tofu in there as well. So there's a lot of different ways that you can also include other proteins in. You know, you can have your cake and eat it, literally, you know, but people don't get it. And that's why it's like really nice that we get to share about this and actually do get to like raise awareness that it isn't just means that you can never touch animal products ever again. So that's really nice.
And also, I think, sorry to cut you there, plant-based doesn't mean it's not a trend to be fair. Of
Yeah,
course, now it's trending.
It is, yeah.
But when you look into the basics of nutrition, we've always been encouraged to eat more plants.
Absolutely.
South African food-based dietary guidelines are saying eat more plants, eat more whole grains. So it's not like a 2024, 2023
no,
thing.
for sure. There's so many things. Even the hypertensive guidelines are also asking us to cut back on
the heart guidelines are saying that as well. Eat more, plenty of fruits and vegetables, and that is plant-based.
Even Discovery for our health checks to get all of our points.
Plant-based.
The first questions they ask: how many fruit and veggies do you eat every day?
So if we can, just like improve our diet and make them more, more plants, and still get protein sources and still get meat if you want to eat meat. But
Absolutely, yeah. So that's amazing. And then I know we just mentioned the proteins specifically. We spoke about how there's animal proteins, and then we can also get plant proteins.
Yeah.
So can you give me a very high level, simple definition or explanation about the difference between the two?
Yeah, the main difference is that the animal protein is termed complete. And I'm saying that from a point of nutritional analysis, that it has these amino acids I was talking about that make a protein structure. But that doesn't mean plant-based necessarily all of them are like 0 amino acids. Some are low in certain amino acids. Like, for example, when you talk about whole grains, they are low in lysine, they are high in methane. Is it methane? Yeah. Methionine. See, that one. So, but when you look into legumes, they might be high in lysine.
The inverse,
yeah. So that makes you think that, okay, these plant sources, yes, they are low in overall amino acids compared to animal proteins. We can say they're incomplete, but not necessarily empty when it comes to protein. The key here is variety and balance, making sure that, and I don't like using the word balance, because I know dietitians are known for
that's like, what do you mean? That was like the second part of our registered dietitian balance.
But I want to say variety and combinations. I'm a big fan of nourishment. So if we combine certain things, those plant protein sources that are low in certain amino acids, and this is, I think, where we come in as dietitians, then you pair it with something else, making sure that you're not just now sitting with just semp and beans. Maybe let's improve by adding some lentils in there, or that makes then the plant protein sources be as useful as the animal sources.
Exactly. I think that actually brings their nutritional value right up on the same par as animal proteins. Because I think, basically what you did just say is that the animal proteins, because they're complete, that means that they've got all the essential amino acids that we just said our body cannot make. We have to get them from food sources. So animal proteins generally have those all right off the bat. Whereas our plant-based proteins, we kind of have to do a bit of a like puzzle piece mixing and matching 100%. Situation. But if you can get that right, and if you know how to do that, which is very simple, then it actually is the exact same as what you're getting from your animal proteins, because you're getting all those complete proteins still.
100%.
So that's amazing.
Growing up, my granny used to make this meal. It was maize meal. Now some other people use semp, but it was maize meal, beans, and nuts.
Oh, yeah.
And it was a plant-based meal, and will not add meat in it.
Okay.
So when you look into eat that combination, especially by adding beans and nuts combined.
Perfect then. I mean, without even knowing it, that is like a perfect template in our textbook. Like, that's the perfect
And many people know that meal, and then we call it chidzimba.
Yeah.
People know that meal, but then nowadays, like, oh, I need to add meat. But that is not how we used to eat it. We used to just eat it like that, and it was complete.
Yeah, and I think that's amazing. I'm pretty sure a lot of our cultural meals are already complete off the back. And actually not even just ours. I think a lot of, if you even look at like Asian meals and Indian meals, their cuisine is so good with like having rice, for example. So that's already going to be a whole grain, and then they'd add like lentils or dal and stuff like that in there. So again, that's a vegetarian meal that you don't even have to add any protein or animal protein to, and it's complete on its own. You don't even need to do anything else. So I think that's fantastic.
So there is room for both,
even in our cultural meals, which is amazing.
Which is amazing.
There's a big room for
you
both.
Just have to know that's
what you're doing. And then in terms of micronutrients, is there a big difference, or any other nutrients, is there a big difference between what we're getting from our animal sources and our plant sources?
In terms of bioavailability, I love that big
word. Okay, we're going here already.
Yes.
All right.
So in terms of bioavailability, just absorption, in terms of how our body absorbs certain nutrients, you find that your animal sources, when it comes, for example, to iron, it's more bioavailable, so our bodies absorb.
So what's bioavailable? Let's just break that down.
I think the simplest way to explain it is just how our body absorbs the nutrient and uses the nutrient. So when it comes to animal protein, for example, they are a good source of iron. But then we can do the same with plants.
There's also iron in plants, but it's just a
Yes.
little bit harder to absorb.
And
through
that's
our
where
bodies.
you add vitamin C.
Got you.
By adding vitamin C, you're improving bioavailability.
Makes it a lot easier for our body
makes
to absorb. So it like maximizes that absorption.
Exactly. So that's where you're like, okay, if we are doing a kale salad, for example, or making spinach, adding some lemon juice
So
or
easy.
adding some orange segments improves the iron. So it doesn't mean that every time we need iron sources, it has to be animal protein.
Yeah.
It can be plant protein.
Because that's probably one of the, like a big myth is,
It's a
we're going to
huge
be
myth.
anemic if we eat plant-based or we go vegetarian or something like that. And it's, again, not the case. So it's so
even
nice.
your zinc as well. You can get zinc from animal protein, but of course, you can still get zinc from your legumes, your nuts. Those are plant-based protein sources. It's about pairing as well. How do we pair to improve and maximize the nutrient, the nutrients?
Yeah.
Just what do we add with the other?
Yeah. I think some of the other like nutrients that I love also when it comes to like plant-based proteins, for example, or just like a plant-based diet in general, is like overall, because we're focusing so much more on our whole grains and our legumes and our vegetables. Obviously, that means we're going to be taking in so much more fiber, which is
100%,
fantastic.
yes.
And that on its own has got so many benefits that we can dive into later. And then also if you think about like, if you're comparing your animal proteins versus your plant proteins, animal proteins just generally have so much higher fat content.
Especially the saturated fat.
Especially the saturated fat. So what, like, saturated fats, like, are they, do we want to be avoiding them or do we want to be including them in our
diet? We
want
want them, but in like minimal quantities.
Right,
we already, when you're talking about the total fat that you consume, we often say that what should take precedence is your unsaturated fat, what is called the good healthy fats. And predominantly we get that from plant sources. And then the saturated fats, we still less than 10% of our total diet can be saturated fats.
I think it's pretty hard these days to cut it out completely, unfortunately.
It's unfortunate, because of the westernized diets and all of that. But we're already getting that. So you don't have to like
add on top of it. Exactly.
So, and when we look into particularly heart health, one of the huge recommendations is that we must always cap the saturated fat. Hence, even if you are eating animal proteins, remove the skin and remove the visible fat. So yeah, when it comes to plant sources,
so many more benefits with that.
Higher in unsaturated fat. I love the fiber bit.
Lower in unsaturated.
Lower
in the unsaturated. Saturated fats.
Yes.
Oh my gosh, you're right.
I often say, when it comes to English, I get confused quite quickly.
And even I confuse myself there.
Yeah, so the plant sources are more higher in unsaturated fats and lower in saturated fats. And I think that's a good thing for
sure
overall the diet. But the fiber bit is also like
it's actually like so amazing to see, like just like listing it all out like this, how many benefits there are actually to the plant-based proteins. Like I think it's fantastic how many in terms of like the nutrients, even the micronutrients that might be lacking a little bit. It's amazing how there's always a way to get around that. There's never a full con where you're always going to be missing out on something. There's always a way to add into it.
The one nutrient, that we do say watch, especially for street vegans, is vitamin B12. That one becomes a little bit tricky to get from plant sources. But as I said, again, street vegans, not plant-based.
Gotcha, yeah.
So which means you can still get enough if you're on plant-based where you are eating animal proteins here and there. But for street vegans, there is means and they can take supplementation for that. It shouldn't be like something that stops you from eating more plants.
Exactly. And I think also with the way that the Western diet that you mentioned just now, the way that most of us are used to eating, our portion sizes when it comes to animal proteins anyway are so big. They're so much bigger than what they need to be. So honestly, if you eat animal proteins 2 or 3 times a week, you will easily be meeting your B12. No problem, So you don't even need to be stressing about, like you say, if you are just following a plant-based diet, even if majority of that is plant, the few times that you do eat animal proteins, I mean,
you're meeting
the portion sizes that we're following these days is insane. So you will be ticking that box, no problem anyway. So I think that's awesome.
I love meat, but more plant-based. And I still enjoy meats, but in right quantities and, still variety of vegetables, and that's how I also try in my house. And sometimes it's not easy, especially with other ex-family members to say, okay, here's a plate of food, and they look at it and I'm like,
Yeah, my favorite thing
where's
is
the meat?
to like make a recipe for someone, and I don't tell them it's vegetarian or something if it's like a curry and they can't
yeah?
really see like what's in it, or like a minced dish or something like that, or like a curry with tofu in, and they don't know what's in it, and then I give it to them and I don't say anything. I'm like, yeah, like have this curry that I made, and they love it. And I'm like, yeah, it was vegetarian, or it's completely vegan, and then they're shocked, and then all of a sudden they're like, okay, maybe it wasn't that good, but I'm like, no, guys, you really, really enjoyed it.
Let me tell you though, when I started sort of like experimenting with plant-based food items that are packaged as plant-based, I had cauliflower. I still am. I'm traumatized from that situation.
What was it? Cauliflower rice or just cauliflower?
It was, they said buffalo wings.
Okay. So like chicken wings or something,
I
like
thought it
chicken
was
wings.
Wings.
Okay.
When I took a bite.
Oh no,
it was
that's
cauliflower.
really heartbreaking.
And they had found a way to make it look like it's a buffalo wing.
But did it taste?
No, it was cauliflower.
How can they do that to cauliflower though? That's really upsetting because I love cauliflower. That's like
I also
really
love cauliflower.
betrayal.
But
you
that
know?
day, I was like,
why, guys?
So
taking a step back.
I think the most honest way also of saying people when they think plant-based, they think, oh, now I have to buy these things that are labeled plant-based.
Oh yeah.
There's also an issue of taste. So if you can,
so
if you can put a meal, as you were saying, that you can make these meals, make them delicious, but they don't taste deceiving.
Yeah.
Because I from that day, trust issues.
I had trust issues
I'm
for
like,
days.
What am I eating?
I'm sure.
I want to know what I'm
It's the
eating.
worst because that's a huge like gap in the market, I'd say at the moment for sure, is the fact that you actually just want to find things that are accessible, that don't cost a fortune, and that actually taste good, to be honest.
Yeah.
So
when they say it's it's buffalo wings.
Then I'm expecting buffalo wings, ma'am. Please.
Buffalo wings sauce.
Please. So just to bring us back to protein and our whole chat that we're having now, we've spoken now about also even just like the portion sizes that people are following. And we know that there is so much hype about protein, and you've said about like the muscles, it's like the first thing everyone thinks about. So let's talk about requirements when it comes to different kinds of people. So are there differences between different levels? Is everyone supposed to be eating the same amount of protein? What is our guideline? And does it change if you're following a plant-based diet or an omnivorous diet?
Yeah. So basically the sort of the general baseline guideline from the World Health Organization is that adults should have about 0.8 grams of protein per kilogram. And then it changes with athletes. It can go from 1.4 grams per kilogram to about 2 grams per kilogram. And then, but also for vegans and I think vegetarians, more or less, it's about above 0.8, it's about 1 gram per kilogram minimum. But if obviously a vegetarian is not that active, you don't need like 1.4. You can go up to 1.2 grams.
Just 1.1.
1.1 even. And then, so I think the big difference comes with physical activity when it comes to protein, but also it comes with, if you are full-on vegetarian, you need to increase a bit. And then the other thing is with age. So not elderly, adults above 65.
Got you.
They may need a little bit more. That's where it can go again, 1 to 1.2.
Does make sense because their muscles are naturally degrading at that point. So you do want to make sure that you are topping that up and making sure that
But what we tend to see is that people who are not that physically active, or living a sedentary lifestyle, they will move from the 0.8 grams per kilogram and go to a 1.2. But then they start gaining weight and they wonder why.
Yeah, because like you said, it literally, the first thing that you said about how protein is still energy and calories.
Yes.
So yes, if you're suddenly eating loads of protein, you're not magically going to just lose weight. You're actually going to eating more calories throughout the day, which means you're going to put on weight if you're not actually doing anything in terms of your activity as well.
But also there is a group of people then who don't meet the 0.8 grams per kilogram, where they don't eat enough protein. So we find that even in the morning, whether it's plant-based protein sources or animal protein sources, they don't eat enough. They tend to go for more carbohydrate heavy type of meals. So there has to be that balance again on that, to say that you're eating enough, whether it's plant-based or like it's more plants, sources of protein. So your breakfast in the morning, and you've got fantastic recipes, by the way. You make me love chia pudding.
Oh yes.
You put, I think, mango.
Blending it is the secret. Did you try blending it?
After I saw you
blending it is the secret. I never liked it before that.
After I blended it,
yeah, it's different. It hits different.
It's just I
can get involved with this for sure.
Yeah, but you see, that is quite high protein. And it's full on plants.
I mean, that recipe has got like I think 40 grams of protein in it. So, and that's immediately like can tick
Yes.
someone's protein off for
Yeah.
sure. For breakfast, that's an amazing one. But yeah, no, so that's amazing. It definitely, I think it is like super important to know that there are different recommendations. I think people think that they're a lot higher than what they actually are. So many people like can come to me and are like, oh, I need to be having like 2 grams of protein a day per kg a day. And I'm like, okay, cool. Like, geez, like how much are you exercising? They're like, yeah, I go to like Pilates 2 times a week. I'm like, babes, we don't need to be having that much, to be honest with you. So yeah. And speaking on that, actually, I'm sure, obviously I know that we're both on social media. I'm sure your For You page or your Explore page looks a little bit like mine. I see about like 20 what I eat in a day videos, I think. And all of them starts with the very problematic like body check, and then also of gorgeous people, and then also of like how much protein they have in a day. So it's like what I eat in a day to get 150 grams of protein. And you're like, okay. And obviously we have the background knowledge to immediately be like, okay, like let's see what's going on here. We know what we actually, need to be doing throughout the day. But the general public, and this is the scary thing to me, is that like most people don't know this. So everyone will look at this and say, okay, I need to be also eating 150 grams of protein to look like this. So I think there's a very strong correlation between protein and weight loss.
Yes.
Let's bring it down to why is there this correlation? Does protein actually help at all with weight loss?
So the biggest thing is satiety.
Okay.
If a meal is rich in protein, obviously within the recommendation, then you feel fuller for longer, which means it will reduce your sugar cravings and you're nibbling and cravings. So there's that, which means overall you're going to be controlling your total energy. But also, as we were saying at the beginning, protein is a macronutrient and has functions. And some of that, it helps actually with fat oxidation. And it also helps just to make sure that you've got good muscle mass.
Exactly.
And that contributes to losing body fat as well. So those combinations of things, they make protein that important. For women, it even goes to menstruation. It goes to how your body responds to.
Because it plays such a big role in hormone production.
Huge role. And that will cause weight loss at the end of the day, especially when you're not craving food as much.
Thank you so much for all those practical tips and everything. So if we do have some listeners that do want to learn more, where can they go to actually get evidence-based, that's the important part, and reliable information about plant-based diets, and where can they find out more?
I think the start is to follow experts, especially everybody nowadays wants to talk nutrition. Try dietitians, try us, give us a chance.
Try us.
So, I mean, it may look simplified, as we were saying, that's what we do, but it's actually, we've taken time to go through the science, and then we make it easy for people. So follow our pages, check out, move on. You don't have to follow, just
but you can follow.
You can save a recipe here and there. I'm more into nutrition education and infographics, and I know you are more into recipes. So just follow those people that evoke this love for plant-based.
Thank you so much for all your information. I think we've both learned, we've just both had a great time chatting about all things plant-based, and it's so nice to share this with someone else who knows what they're talking about and is as passionate about it as I am. So thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I can't wait to try that tofu curry.
Please. And also the overnights in chia. You have to try it. Try it out. I promise you it will change your life. You can do it. I trust you. I believe in you. You can for sure. Thank you so much for tuning in. And if you want to know anything else about our lovely guest Mbali, or if you want to hear any further episodes, then just go check out small.com.